Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today I'm chatting with Alyssa Kluge. She is the Director of Communications at Thrive Market. Welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you so much. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm very excited to talk about your career journey, your experience in communications and PR. We have a lot of fun topics we're going to dive into today, which I'm excited about. But before we get into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure, of course. So my name's Alyssa. I am from Michigan in a little small agriculture town and segued to Chicago before bouncing to LA, which is now my home. I love living here. I've lived in Santa Monica and I'm recently, this just in, bought a house in Long Beach, and so I'll be moving to Long Beach shortly, but still in the LA area. I'm a communicator. I'm also a Pilates teacher, and I've taught group fitness for now 15 years, and it's like a love of mine. I'm a daughter, a friend, a partner, a dog mom, and just thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Beautiful introduction. Oh my goodness. Okay. Really quick, I know this isn't marketing related, but I want to touch on Pilates because I think that's
Yeah.
so cool. I recently jumped on the Pilates trend. Not recently, I just did like over 100 classes at Solid Core.
Congratulations. That's
Kind
a
of
huge
obsessed.
accomplishment. Yeah, no, I mean, it's obviously working.
Thank you. I love it. I thought it's been so fun. And also just I feel like fitness is such a great way to connect with yourself,
Right.
especially for someone if you're really busy in your career and life. I've just always turned back to it as a way to give me mental clarity. But how do you find time to fit in teaching Pilates with your career and your life?
Yeah, no, and I think with teaching, it's a gift. One of the gifts that I've been given is the ability to teach and the ability to coach. Growing up, I always thought I'd be a teacher or like a coach of some sort. And, as I made my way through school and thought about like what I wanted to do, thinking about like coaching and teaching was always in the back of my mind. I think I do a really nice job, and I've been fortunate to have a gift to coach and to teach. And it might not be in the traditional sense of like in a classroom, but in a like a group fitness studio. So I started taking fitness classes, in college, just like every other person. I became obsessed with Pure Barre. It was the era of Pure Barre. And at the time, one of the instructors was like, you have great form, you have good musicality. Why don't you come teach? And I was like, I've never even thought about becoming a fitness instructor. That could be fun. It could be great side money, great way to meet people. And so when I moved to Chicago, I was one of the founding instructors of Pure Barre in Chicago
What?
at Streeterville and River North. And so I taught there probably far too much in tandem with my first job. So I would work the 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. shifts. So I would be up at 4:15, leave the house at 4:45 on the train. And if anybody has dealt with Chicago winters, they'll know how rough that really is. It's like -20 outside, so it's pretty chilly. And so I started teaching Pure Barre as just like a side hustle, and it was a wonderful way to meet different women. It was a wonderful way to like build community, you know, meet new people, create friendships, and I'm so grateful for that skill. And now that I live in LA, when I moved to LA, I started teaching Pure Barre again, just like ad hoc. And at the time, I was like, I need a little bit of a break. And so then I started taking Pilates at Pilates Platinum, which is Legree or Mega Reformer. And I've taught there since. I teach every Sunday, 8 and 9 a.m. I sub a ton. It's a wonderful, like, side hustle, but also like a great experience that I've gotten to meet some of my closest
Yeah.
friends.
That is so
Yeah.
incredible. And that's a crazy journey to starting at Pure Barre and
Yeah.
now doing Reformer Pilates. Wow, that's incredible. I love that. And then also the teaching aspect, I think that you mentioned. Actually, now that I've done a lot of episodes, it's really interesting for me to hear a lot of marketers resonate with the teaching aspect. I
Yeah.
think it's because of storytelling and that it's really cool when you can find an avenue that's maybe not a bit traditional to kind of be able to pursue something that you're really passionate about.
Right. It's passion, but it's also giving you kind of like a purpose outside of like your, 9 to 5 career. Like I get a lot of joy out of helping women feel their best, both men and women really. But like one of my favorite stories is when I was at Pure Barre, I was teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. And there was a woman who was freshly pregnant. She was new to working out. So we took it like, as you should, not too crazy. And I was so proud of her because she was so consistent and she credits, me. And of course, this is all of her own work. she gave labor in under 4 minutes. I'm like, she's a machine. I
Oh
mean,
my
that's amazing.
goodness.
Through the power of movement, she discovered that like she was so in tune with her body. She was strong, both physically and mentally. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of, even if it's just a snapshot of somebody's story,
Yeah.
that like I get to be a part of that and help celebrate them, help them prepare for big moments, but also be a bright spot in somebody's day. Just
Yeah.
like when I go to class, I love going to class because it's a bright spot for me. So when you go to solid core for 50 minutes, as hard as it is, like you leave feeling better than when you came in.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing. Okay. Well, now let's get into the marketing.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are Director of Communications at Thrive Market. That is, I'm sure, a broad title that entails a lot. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role looks like?
Of course. So as Director of Comms, I think of comms as, it has a wide tent. And so in my role in particular, I specialize in a couple different elements that kind of fit into comms, but also fit into the broader marketing umbrella, but also sit at the cross function of the business where it's marketing meets merchandising, meets tech, meets government affairs, meets legal, mission, etc. And so in my role in particular, if I could, give a snapshot of it, it would say be earned media. So when you think about true PR, landing placements and being positioned as like an architect of healthy living, that earned media lens is like a big part of my day to day. Thought leadership and awards. So that could be podcasts for your executives. That could be awards celebrating the company's growth, like CNBC Disruptor 50, or getting your CEO on Time 100, next list, which it celebrates like the most, up and coming or like powerful leaders within their business. But that also includes like issues and crisis management, which is sometimes not the fun stuff, but stuff that needs to be addressed. As I mentioned to you previously, it's like every employee is a representative of the brand, and one bad post, one bad thing could spiral out of control. And we know that. And so there's a really particular role or particular responsibility in this role where you act as like a shepherd of the brand health, both internally and externally. And so I think that's something that it's a different skill set. And then in addition, I would say government affairs, which is a passion of mine. I worked with our team to help bring SNAP EBT food stamps online for the first time ever. So I worked with the USDA, Secretary Vilsack, and then our representatives to bring food stamps online for the first time ever, which is really, yes, it's like a career high, but what's more important is that it delivers access to healthy groceries, in the middle of the country where there is no Whole Foods, where I'm from in the middle of Michigan, there is no health food retailer. If you're gluten-free, you're kind of out of luck. And so Thrive Market kind of fills the gap and shows up in service to give those gluten-free goods, to a family in need or similar.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And also so
Thank you.
interesting to see how many different facets that you are working in and that your role is touching, and hearing about the government side of things is something that I even had no idea existed.
Yeah, it's really wonderful because in communications, which often I think can get a bad rap, comms is so much more than just, your Olivia Pope PR-ness. It extends above and beyond that. So I think what communicators and comms professionals need to do really well, I think, is being like a translator, both between like the internal organization to the outside world. So like for me in my role, I think 75% of my day should be communicating with the outside world, whether that's media, whether that's government relations, whether that's just different people outside the Thrive Market ecosystem. How can we, work with them and our internal employees to like tell stories that, are win-win for all parties? So thinking about both the translation of like what we're doing internally and how that percolates and shows up in the external, but also externally, what's moving in the zeitgeist, what is trending, what's different, what's something to watch out for that we need to apply that within internally. So it's kind of being that like meet in the middle of both that internal and external world.
Super, super interesting. I also love what you said about being the shepherd of
Yeah.
the brand. And something you had mentioned that you're really passionate about is being a protector of reputation. What does that mean to you?
Sure. So the reason it resonates with me is PR, again, often can have maybe a bad rap or it seems arbitrary or not maybe as important as like other elements of marketing, maybe attached to growth, etc. But PR is, if you don't have your reputation, you have nothing, right? And you think about relationship equity, being in PR is you're a protector of reputation first and foremost. Like that is your job, playing defense more than you're playing offense. And so thinking about my role at Thrive Market, my job is to protect the brand. So similar to like if you played sports, if you were like the first line of defense in your defensive line in soccer, that's your job. Like you have to kind of stop it before the goalie gets it.
And something that kind of aligned with this like protecting a brand, you had talked about, especially with social media now, it's really easy for things to go viral. And something that can go viral is and even an employee making a very innocent post. I feel like we see this all the time, and even the employee might not even realize the moment that they have. So can you tell me about like how social media and the rise of TikTok and the rise of virality has like influenced what your role is as the protector of brand?
Absolutely. I think it's, as somebody who spends far too much time on TikTok and loves TikTok, I love it. I'm a scroller. I'm not really a poster, but I love to watch. I love to see like what my algorithm changes to be. I think something for anybody who's in a role similar to mine or is protecting their brand in some capacity is thinking about like stuff happens, right? And like stuff happens, but what you do in response to it is what matters. So yes, you can set the framework of like, hey, don't post anything that's not very nice or inflammatory or incorrect. But also like when that does happen, or if there is a negative post about your brand, what do you do in response? Can you show up in service to that member saying, you know what, we messed up. I'm really sorry. We're going to make it right. We learned from you. Here's what we're going to do to address it. Here's what we're going to do next time. Something of that nature. But also something that I like to specialize in is creating like SOP, standard operating procedures. So say, for example, if a TikTok gets more than 5,000 views, we make sure we reach out within 4 hours or something of that nature. But if it gets more than 100,000 views, maybe you call them right away or something of that nature. That's a very arbitrary example, but creating those SOPs in place so when things do happen, which they will, you have a plan in place because, without having a plan, the plan is to fail, right? Or whatever that adage is. But thinking about how you can be proactive and be ready on the defensive line to address those things when they do happen.
What is your perspective on, like, sometimes right now I'll see is somebody can have a bad moment with a brand. It does. And I feel like I've seen this all the time, and it can be, I don't know, it could be, there's a million examples. You've probably seen them too. And it goes crazy viral. Said brand will get a lot of hate around this said moment. And whether or not it's deserved or not could be another conversation. But it's a lot, and it's a lot for you as a brand to handle. So like, how do you, because to me it seems so difficult. And even me, I think about it with my brand of like, oh my goodness, what if something happened and something went viral and like, what do I do? It feels like you can get canceled in a day. Like, how do you approach that? Or how do you even handle that?
Well, no brand ever wants to go viral for the wrong reasons. It does happen. And in my role, something I try to do and something I've done so far, hopefully well, is staying calm. Because most leaders and most of those in your company are looking to you for advice, are looking to you for counsel. And you have to make the determination of like, how do we respond in service? How do we respond with care, with kindness, and align with the brand voice? So sometimes that could be saying that you messed up and that you're right, we did mess that up. Let me fix it. Here's what we learned from it, and here's how we're going to establish an SOP moving forward so that doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. People mess up, and I think people are more understanding of brands who acknowledge wrongdoing, who acknowledge that they've made an error, and acknowledge that they can grow and be better based on that member or experience's behavior.
Yeah, I think that's, and even just talking to you, I can see that you're very calm.
No, I mean, it's, there's heated moments, of course, but I think, it takes a lot of internal work to identify that, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to be okay. We're going to be as calm as humanly possible, which is really hard to do as somebody who drinks more cold brew than anybody should probably handle for their heart. But thinking about, like, you need to set the example. You need to be the leader in the room. And, like, for so long, when you were watching, what is that person going to do? I know that sometimes eyes are on me. So I got to think, how can I show up in service to everybody else? Even though internally, my gut may be doing backflips, how can I show up calm? How can I make this situation better? Because sometimes it's just a bad situation on a bad day, and we're human. How can we be calm? How can we think clearly? Is that taking a walk for 10 minutes outside, go touch some grass? Like for me and for what I coach executives before like a podcast or before an interview, it's 30 minutes on their calendar before they don't have anything. So before that big interview, they've got 30-minute break. I don't care if you prep. I don't care if you go outside. Do something else besides like, oh my God, I'm so nervous, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to like bring that nervous energy, that frenetic energy, like accelerates the heart rate. Think about like box breathing even. Like I've employed a box breathing technique when those bad situations seem to happen. And it feels like it slows my heart rate down. How can I show up again, like in the highest version of myself so I can show up, as the best version of the brand?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Like I know the crisis management piece is just one part of communications, but it has just been, at least for me, really interesting when I see this happen on social media, when it's just things spread all the time.
Yeah.
And I don't know why the one that's coming to mind is like the Coldplay
Oh
incident.
God. I would, I felt what a lose-lose. That was a really tough scenario. And I'm very grateful I work at Thrive Market. And, you know, something that I really admire about Thrive and where I work and where I've like represented throughout my career is you're working for kind people, smart people who
Mhm.
are doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. So having like
Yeah.
that integrity attached, and nobody's perfect. People make mistakes. I make mistakes all day long, but being having agency and like owning up to those mistakes, I think that's like 90% of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I kind of want to move on to the earned media piece
Yeah,
because I
my
know you
favorite.
mentioned amazing. Okay, that's also really important. So can you talk to me about what that part looks like at your job? And I know also you mentioned how learning how to quantify earned media has also
Yeah,
been a passion of yours.
totally. So thinking about again, PR is protector of reputation, but a big part of that is how you show up in the world, earned media in particular. We know that like what the bots are reading, AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever model you're using, are going to earn media as credible resources in lieu of, say, like a TikTok or something. That's what the
Mm.
newest research is showing, and that's as of August 2025. Who knows if that could change or
So they're going like news outlets, for
correct.
example.
Yeah. So like if
Okay.
you pull, for example, what is Thrive Market on ChatGPT, it'll pull from a Forbes article, a CNBC article,
Mm.
things that have like that third party credibility lens. And I always think about, what is news? Think of news as from an earned media relationship or an earned media perspective, you know, a dog biting a man is not news. A man biting a dog, now that's news. So thinking about what is newsworthy and like not spinning it, but like what is truly news. Sometimes you don't have the news, and sometimes you got to think of new angles or something that could be newsworthy. But for me, earned media is my favorite part of the job because it allows you to tell a story about like the internal workings or the internal magic that the company or the brand is creating. And how do you communicate that with the external, being that translator between A and B? I think it's the most wonderful part of the job and the part of the job I get most excited about. I wake up every day excited to pitch and to do earned media. And so for me, 3 hours a day is dedicated to earned media every day without fail. Sometimes that's working late at night. Sometimes that's getting on a little early to do the earned media work because it takes work. And I also think something that I am really grateful to have learned earlier on is relationship equity. It's not transactional. What do they need? How can I show up in service to them? What do they need to tell a story? How can I give that to them? And if I can't, what do I need to adapt to give them what they need? What are they motivated by? And that's how like earned media one-on-one relationships, I think, can only grow and grow and get better. And I'm not, an expert by any means, but I do believe that like earned media is your chops for all things PR and protect your reputation.
It's super interesting. And also the AI component, I think
Yeah,
is
it's wild.
so important to also understand that. And as I think I used to ask this question more often, I would ask my guests, like, how
Yeah,
do you see AI impacting
sure.
your role? And I do think it's such an important thing to talk about
Absolutely.
because the growth and adoption has just been wild. And if you're not yeah, if you don't know where ChatGPT is pulling your brand information, then you're letting it be up to chance versus being able to protect your reputation.
Yeah, and like it's things change so rapidly, right? Like the only constant is change. And so when you think about what ChatGPT is pulling today could be different in 6 months. So like for example, Reddit is another really powerful platform because, you know, Gemini and a couple other platforms have partnerships with Reddit. So they'll pull brand information off of Reddit. And as we all know, Reddit can be the wild, wild west. As a big Redditor myself, I can attribute to that. But thinking about how you show up in Reddit, how you show up in the earned media landscape. But luckily, I do believe in like the power of news, and like I love local journalism. I subscribe and pay personally for tons of different like publications. I get the New York Times delivered to my house. I get the LA Times print delivered to my house. I think like reading news can only make you a better earned media professional and better specialist in that way. So yeah.
And what about, so when it comes to Reddit, for example, like a lot of that information isn't always true on Reddit.
Correct.
Okay. And so, but again, it's all anonymous posting, and the whole purpose of it that it's people. So as a brand, like, do you have advice for brands on navigating? Like, what do you do with Reddit when it feels like the wild, wild west, but so many people are going to it, but you don't necessarily get to have control over what it's saying?
Right. And it's a big question mark right now. Like, how are brands showing up on Reddit? We know Reddit is the 6th most searched term in the world. So when you say jeans, best jeans, Reddit, that's like, once you tag Reddit onto it, like the search results explode. I won't get into the nitty gritty like specifics of like those metrics, but Reddit is it's the new frontier. It's the new Instagram. It's the new, like whatever you want to refer to it as. But I think how brands can show up on Reddit is like with honesty, integrity, like adhering to guidelines, adhering to, you know, there's a reason that the moderators of Reddit are so powerful because they do a great job of moderating their communities. So it's like, how can you work with that moderator to be like, hey, is it okay to post on behalf of Thrive Market and say, hey, we're looking for new snack ideas. Does anybody have a favorite snack we don't carry? You know, like working and being honest and transparent in like real world. I think real world transparency in a Reddit forum goes a long way, and honesty and integrity only accelerates that.
How about TikTok? Because I feel like TikTok search is also huge.
Huge.
So I feel like it used to only be Reddit is where you could get like the real personal take.
Yeah.
But now it's also like, maybe if I'm looking for Thrive, like I would go watch an unboxing. That's probably like the first thing that I would search.
For sure. Yeah.
Is that also like a big part of your earned? Does that fall under earned media, or where does that kind of fall under in the PR?
Yeah, good question. So when I think about organic social in particular, that generally falls kind of in like a different camp in creative. However, in my role, I feel really fortunate and like really at a place of privilege to work cross-functionally across the business. So not only in marketing with like social media organic, but social media paid. So for example, when we get a big story and it says, you know, a really dreamy headline, our paid media gets to leverage that. Like how awesome that you're able to not only amplify your earned press, but also that lands in ChatGPT, that lands in people have a point of pride attached to it, but also they can leverage it in other ways.
And then talking about the media aspect, and we're talking about the media, we talked about the protector of reputation. Are there any other aspects of your role that you feel like are quite large?
I think there an element of my role that's quite large that may not get the limelight is government affairs. Government affairs, thinking about being like a lobbyist or like kind of a pseudo government relations, you know, expert. In a business like Thrive Market in particular, you know, it's food. Food is regulated for a reason, you know, with USDA, FDA, etc. And so there's a lot of work that's done on the government affairs side, in particular around food stamp and mission and advocacy, that I think I've been really fortunate to work on and under as a passion, but B, because it shows up in service to those who like need access to healthy food, who maybe can't afford the premium on groceries. And government affairs it's obviously a passion of mine because I believe in like the power of like healthy food and what it can do for you, and how like Thrive Market is kind of filling that gap for those who don't have access to healthy food. And so government affairs has been kind of a really creative way of thinking internal and external, like what's happening in the external world. Food is expensive. People are having more than 80% of American adults are stressed about grocery prices. Like, I get it. Yeah, like that's valid. And so how can Thrive Market help show up to that 80% and the 20% that maybe aren't as stressed to make it a little bit easier? And a lot of the ways you can do that is through government programs like SNAP EBT, or working in partnership with like our mission team to give free memberships to like groups like teachers, nurses, first responders, the folks who are doing the groundwork. And so getting to work kind of in that government affairs meets mission world has been a really exciting like Pandora's box within this job that I had never really anticipated.
Yeah, I can imagine that also being really fulfilling to get to work
really
on those
fulfilling.
things. Yeah.
And earlier on in my career, something that is really a wonderful, like, I love political science. I studied international relations and economics, so I thought I was going to be a lobbyist. I thought that's all I was going to do, is because it's an amalgam of both like people skills but political skills. And I actually worked for Wrigley Gum Company as an intern, which was really fun. I got to meet Warren Buffett, which was like that was pretty cool.
What?
That was pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's
I'm like
so cool.
kind, wonderful, like soul.
He's my idol.
And yes, I mean, so iconic, right? And I'm like waiting for like a fashion collab to drop with him or something.
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
It's like when Maggie Smith did the, for the Professor McGonagall, she did the, oh my God, what brand was it? She did that collab like a year and a half ago.
I never saw that.
Oh my God, I'll pull it up after.
Oh my
it's so cool. And I mean, also she's like, she's like knighted or whatever in England. Like she's iconic. She's
oh my God.
Cool. She's since passed away, but Professor McGonagall, for the Harry Potter fans out there, I thought I was going to be a lobbyist. I was interning at a lobbying firm, and then I interned at Wrigley, where it was kind of that government affairs meets PR in a corporate affairs position. So both like internal and external. And I was at the Wrigley Gum global headquarters in Chicago, which was so cool. And you had access to all these cool snacks, and you got to really kind of play in the world of like CPG and like see how gum is made and different flavors and all this kind of cool stuff. And that role really opened up my eyes of like, oh, you can do government, but you can also do this like other world PR, which is kind of attached to this. So like external affairs, where it meets internal affairs, and kind of the amalgamation of all of those is something that I feel like I didn't know was a career path. And discerning that, oh, maybe this is something I could be really good at and something that I could, show up in well. And obviously it's worked out. So as director of comms, I feel really grateful to kind of have that foundation and, hopefully continue on.
And for someone who's listening to this and they're like, oh my goodness, her job sounds so cool.
Gosh.
What advice would you give to them on breaking into the industry or getting started within PR communications?
Yeah. So PR and communications, it's competitive. And I know that firsthand. I applied for, I think it was 275 jobs coming out of college, and didn't get any of them. And they were all like entry level or like internships. And the reason I got my first internship, and I'll segue this into like the advice that I would provide, is I was at a gym pool, which is equivalent to like an Equinox type thing, when I was interning at Wrigley, and it wasn't as nice as Equinox, but you get my drift. And I was reading the Steve Jobs biography, which had just come out that summer, and the gentleman next to me was reading The Economist magazine, which I was reading because I was in international affairs. That's what you read. You read The Economist magazine. And there's a column in there, I think it's called Charlemagne. And I was like, oh, did you read this week's Charlemagne section? And it was about, I don't even remember. It was, a while ago. And he's like, yeah, totally. And we started chatting. Come to find out, he's like a big wig at a PR firm that meant like PR meets like corporate affairs. So like PR meets government affairs. And he was like, if you don't have a job when you graduate, call me and I'll build you one. And so he hired me. And that's how I got my first job, through relationships. So like one is, if I could give advice, it's like, be tenacious and be tenacious. Like really, like sometimes it's gonna suck. Like it's really hard. It's really hard. And like, I can't imagine how hard it is now, because 15 years ago it was hard. Like it's only gotten harder now. And like, two, thinking about your relationship equity is everything. So like it's like that golden age of friendship, like, be a good friend, be how you want to be treated. like thinking about the equity that you build with your relationship is the foundation for everything else.
And also, it doesn't need to be even that big of a relationship. Like that was somebody that you
So
just met and you were
casual.
kind and you were curious and you literally have no idea where. I mean, I feel like this just always ends up being a theme, which I love, is
Yeah.
just like putting out good things into the world. Like you never know
Right.
what's gonna come back.
Well, and like not only paying that forward, but it's like acting as like a tree and it's like, okay, the branches of like how can I like pull others up? Like how can I
Yeah.
help others succeed? And like again, going back to the adage of being a coach, like yes, like my job is amazing and I love my job and I love what I do and I'm so lucky and like Thrive Market is amazing. Like it's an amazing company and they do the work. They do the hard work that sometimes doesn't get celebrated or maybe isn't acknowledged. One of the most rewarding parts of like my life, my career is like being a coach though, is like being a manager to a girl who maybe isn't as confident in her career and like getting her early promoted because we set these OKRs for her and she exceeded all of them. Like that is a bigger high for me than any earned placement or like helping a woman feel her best for her wedding as a teacher, as a Pilates coach. So like those kind of like abilities and like the capacity to uplift others, I think is like the best joy you can get.
Yeah. Also very appropriate for marketing
Yeah.
girly.
No, of course.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's the biggest thing. And one is I always feel so grateful for the women that say yes and
Right.
coming on and sharing their stories because I do think, and so many too of the guests that I have on will also have stories about how other women in their careers uplifted them. There are also can be incredible men that can uplift you as
Yeah,
well.
of course.
But I also think something special for us women of like sticking together and supporting each other like through our career. I'm very much in the believer of just like putting out as much good as possible is just like only going to bring you good back.
Right. That and like it's a win-win for everybody. Like
Yeah.
there's enough room for everybody to succeed and like we are only stronger together. Like rising tide lifts all boats, like whatever, moniker you want to refer to. Like the people I look up to the most are all women. Like my mom, small business owner, entrepreneur, my grandma, she's a doctorate of like she's a professor. She's amazing. She's like 84 and she's like crushing it. My former boss is at Azioni PR, which I like attribute almost every major new skill that is like shifted from when I was clipping out traditional newspaper monitoring to like today's version of like AI, which didn't exist back then. Michelle and Leland at Azioni PR, I attribute so much of my success to them, and they've taught me so much about how to be a creative thinker, how to be a translator between the internal and the external, thinking about what's happening in the zeitgeist, how can a brand show up within that zeitgeist, shape the zeitgeist, thinking about counterculture. I'm just so fortunate to have like kind of a quasi board of directors around me that maybe organically happen and don't know each other, but like I tap them for advice, just like how I hope I can be in service to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. How about other than just breaking into the industry, right? Also, I loved how you mentioned how many jobs you applied to that you got rejected
Yeah, a
from.
lot. So a lot. So like it's hard. And like I don't like won't sugarcoat it. I cried myself to sleep and I remember a family member saying, "You should just print out your resumes and like go there." I was like, "Yeah."
Why do they always defer to that advice?
I was like, "I hear you and like thank you for that advice. It's not how it works now, you know, but like there's something to be said for like being tenacious." Like I remember when I wanted to work at Azioni PR, I was working at like a bigger, like think of like the big four of like PR shops. Hill and Knowlton at the time, which I don't know if it's still under the Hill and Knowlton umbrella, but nevertheless, when I wanted to work at Azioni PR, they didn't have an office in Chicago. But I saw that they represented Sakara Life, which I was like, that brand is
I
so
love
cool.
Sakara
I mean, they're
Life.
amazing.
Yeah.
And Danielle and Whitney are like phenomenal humans. I've had the chance to work with them, and they're just beyond. They're wonderful, smart, talented, kind. And I remember being like, I want to work there. I want to work there. I want to work there because like I want to tell brand stories like that. And I kept harassing them, probably was the correct appropriate verbiage. And I was like, hey, I'm moving to LA. I want to work there. I want to work there. I want to work for you. I want to work for you. How do I get to work for you? And like they were like, okay, crazy lady, you know. And then there was an opening and I applied and fortunately was able to like land a position there as a SAE at the time and worked on brands like Just Water with Jaden Smith many moons ago. Brands like Sakara Life. Brands spanning like CPG, retail, and then media in particular. So like Overheard LA, Overheard New York, that media umbrella before it's like been bought and I'm not sure who owns it now, but working with Jessie, the founder, working with Sophia of Girl Boss, like those individuals who have not only like helped shape culture, but like shaped so much of like what we have today. Like Overheard LA, I think is like a great example of like how that kind of started like a new generation of memes, or like I don't even know what the right word is, but getting to work with brands like that, I think I've been so fortunate to get to work with.
And what type of skills would you say allowed you to be really successful early on in your career, or skills that somebody who really wants to work in this industry or grow in this industry should focus on developing?
It's a great question. I think skills that will pay off in dividends is like being a big reader. And I remember one of the biggest pieces of feedback I got when I was early on in my career was they're like, you're not creative enough. You're not thinking like a journalist would. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Like, how do I do that? And they're like, I want you to start reading. And like, not The Economist, reading for fun. So like,
Crazy.
I know, I'm like, what's reading for fun? You know, because in school, you're like programmed to be like, I need to read a textbook. And discovering like the joy of like fiction reading. Like now I devour books. If a quick shout out to my friend, Read This and That on Instagram. I follow her. She's like a good friend of mine, Courtney. She outlines the best books ever. They're so fun, so creative. And I remember reading Anthony Doerr's book, All the Light We Cannot See. And like that opened up my eyes to be like a creative like thinker because of reading, of like fiction. And that changed like my entire trajectory of my careers, like reading more frequently, but reading like fun stuff, creative stuff, fictional stuff, not just like nonfiction. You know, I've read Napoleon's like biography and it was great, but you know, reading Anthony Doerr's All the Light We Cannot See opened up my eyes to thinking about, you know, how to succeed in PR through that creative lens. So I think that's one. Again, relationship equity. Like, I think that's so critical. And how you treat one person is how you treat other people. That I think cannot be underestimated enough because not every relationship is going to be great. Not every interaction is going to be great. But thinking about, like, again, what are they motivated by? How can I show up how they need? And it's not just like a transaction. So it's like a true relationship builder. I think is so critical for someone who's trying to get into this career. And it doesn't need to be like with a journalist. It can be with your friend. It can be with your sister. Being like a good relationship building, you know, having that equity with someone.
Yeah, yeah. And then yeah, I really, well, I want to say I love the reading advice there too, just because I am also a really avid reader. And
Yeah.
I even remember when I started Security Society, I was just on business books and just on
Right.
all of the actionable stuff. And then lately I've been into more, even just like fun, like fiction books or just like exploring new genres. I also just feel like it gives you such a different perspective because if
Totally.
you're always just like so focused on the skill, then you lose a different perspective and you kind of might even get like a little like blind.
Right. And it's fun. Reading is fun.
It should
Reading
be
is
fun.
cool. Like I love to read. Like everybody should pick up a great book and like
Yeah.
you boom, 4 hours are gone. You're like, oh my God, I have things to do. You know, I just like got, you know, pulled in. But you know, reading I think is really important for somebody who wants to get into this career because it allows you to think differently and it allows you to think creatively, relationship equity. But I was thinking about like advice, and I think like reading is one, relationship equity is another, and then like who you surround yourself with is a direct reflection of like who you will become or who you are becoming. And so I'm thinking about like my board of directors, you know, quote, that like I feel like I've been really lucky to be surrounded with like incredible managers and bosses who have like shaped who I am as a person. My partner, who is an amazing and supportive man, like having the people around you as like your cheerleaders and like, you know, your superchargers, and like having that kind of like wonderful like friendship of circle around you, not as you at the center, but like as you as somebody who like taps every single one of them is like a good friend or as a person that they trust or a person that they admire. So having that kind of board of directors, you know, is a silly term, but thinking about that through a business lens or like a career trajectory lens, having that board of directors, I think has been, and having those people like be adopted into the circle. You know, they're not just going to be like, I want to be your mentor. I'm going to like help you. No, you got to go look. You got to go find out. You got to ask and like, you know, close mouths don't get fed, right? Like you got to ask and you got to take no's and answers sometimes, and that's okay. But, you know, having the people around you, I think can really pay off in dividends, obviously.
Yeah, I love that. Create your own board of directors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right. Well, as we wrap up, an incredible episode touching on so many fun topics. What is last piece of advice you want to give the marketing girlies?
I know we've covered quite a few of them. Be less hard on yourself. It's going to be okay. It's hard out there. Like, news is hard, world is hard. Like, make sure you show up for yourself. Make sure you show up your board of directors, your friends, your family, and like be less hard on yourself. It's hustle culture is scary, and as somebody who like kind of grew up in the rise of the girl boss, era, like I teach, I like write for publications part-time to like get better at what I do. I have my job that I love, but like also what's important is like how do I spend like my time with friends or my family, or like when we go and volunteer at the beach to pick stuff up. Like, work is not everything. And so like don't take life so seriously. It's gonna be okay.
I think we all needed to hear that.
Yeah, like we all gotta hear that. It's hard. And especially like emails attached to your phone, Slack, like as somebody who's a chronic, early morning riser and like tries not to check their email like within the first 15 seconds of waking up. Like we all could just give ourselves some grace and give other people some grace too.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on Marketing Girly. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.